local control, lose the debt, lots more accountability. A coalition of leaders report what they think should be done to fix Detroit public schools. Some of them are here this morning. Can and should the recommendations be taken? A roundtable on what's realistic. Today is Sunday, April 5th, 2015, and this is Flashpoint.
Hi, and welcome to Flashpoint. A very happy Easter Sunday to you and yours. And if you're celebrating Passover, I wish you the best of holidays, too. This morning, we are going to again turn our attention to education. A long-awaited report from the Coalition for the Future of Detroit Schoolchildren was released this past week. There were a number of conclusions in this document that came as no surprise at all. Detroit schoolchildren continue to struggle, even lagging the students in the nation's other troubled urban school districts. But there were some recommendations that did come as a surprise. The Coalition believes it's time to return the control of Detroit schools to a publicly elected school board. It's been a long time since the schools were run by anything close to local control. But there's more. How about a recommendation that the state take on the hefty debt of the school system? It's hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, there's already a great deal of doubt that Lansing will have the stomach for that, but how does the state answer the fact that the schools went from a small surplus of money before state control to an enormous debt today? But to some, this was just another round of well-intended guidelines, for example, put students first, that somehow are never truly put into action. And if you're already rolling your eyes at what seems like a doomed mission, I get it. But I also know that there is not a more important endeavor in trying to create a truly new, vibrant, and prosperous Detroit. This morning, the report, its recommendations, and importantly, the likelihood that it's going anywhere. It's today on Flashpoint. Well, here it is. The choice is ours. The report of a coalition of a lot of familiar and very respected names. Let's talk about it with three of the members of the team that produced this document. Tanya Allen is the president and CEO of the Skillman Foundation. Sandy Baruah has been with us many times before as the CEO and president of the Detroit Regional Chamber. And Lamar Lemons is with us, an at-large member of the Detroit Board of Education, which many have referred to as a board in exile. Thank you all very much for being here, and happy Easter.
Thank
nice
you.
to have you
Happy
here.
Easter.
Well, Tanya, I want to start, if we could, by looking beyond Detroit. This document starts with the line, our state used to be a national leader in education, but now sadly we rank near the bottom. What has happened?
Well, I think one of the main things that's happened is that we've had a lack of stability across our schools in the state. The other thing is we don't have any state standards. We don't have a clear leader of education in the state of Michigan, and we have a hodgepodge of public policy. And that is translating down to local school districts. And I think in Detroit, what you see, we're the canary in the mine where all of this comes together in a way that is exacerbated with poverty and as well as the demographic loss of students.
We had another report that came out this week that showed us that a lot of what we consider, I guess, middle-class schools all over the state are lagging as well. Kids not meeting where they're supposed to be. I mean, this is bigger than the city.
Absolutely. In the state of Michigan, we barely meet 30% of all of our students are reaching the national average or the national standards. 30%. That's white, black, or whatever else you want to count in that. And the other thing I would say is that our African American population across the state, not just Detroit, our students are actually declining. We used 8 years ago in reading, fourth grade was 28th. Today it's 44th. And the reason we're 44 is because 6 other states didn't get in on the data. So it is the rapid decline and erosion is amazing.
Sandy, I think the recommendation that got the most attention was that the state needs to take on this enormous debt.
It's always easy to ask someone else to pick up the check.
Of course. You speak Republicanese in general. How do you think that request is going to play in Lansing?
Well, I mean, initially it's not going to play well at all, and I think we're seeing that. But it really comes down to one basic tenet, and that is that the school children of Detroit right now are paying the cost of bad decisions from adults in the past, and it is unfair for that dynamic to continue. If we want education to be the ladder from poverty to the middle class and beyond, that ladder has to work. Education has to work, and right now the way it's structured is that DPS is not in a position to repay that debt. That's just reality. The citizens of Detroit are not in a position to repay that debt. That's just reality. The debt is actually owned by the state. The state has actually backed this debt. They're actually the ones legally responsible for it. So it is the
And
best.
they also, some would say they're morally responsible because they're the ones that took over the schools in 1999.
I think the best way to look at it is the best option out of a suite of really bad options.
Yeah. Lamar, the other recommendation I think that got a lot of people's attention was that this group felt that it's time to get elected local control back in charge of Detroit public schools. Now, cynics will say, when we last checked in with an elected leadership in Detroit schools, it was mayhem. We had crazy headlines regarding people like Otis Mathis and Reverend David Murray. I mean, how do you answer to the way that these schools were led in the past by elected officials?
I think that, first of all, there was an exaggeration in just headlines. Otis Mathis was on the board that was de facto in exile, so you really can't say that. And so the last time the board did have control, in 1999, they had a $115 million surplus. The academics were rising. Our superintendent, when he was terminated by the state, was immediately picked up by Cranbrook. So that's the last time, and so that would be the only real fair comparison.
Do you see that being a difficult sell to get this back in the hands of local leadership?
Well, you know, democracy has its ups and downs. I mean, whether it's scandals from the president, Bill Clinton, or Richard Nixon, you know, we have feet of clay, and so all of us. Democracy is not a perfect system, but it beats everything else.
Tanya, we've talked often on this program and pointed out that there really aren't very many urban school districts across the country that do all that well. And yet, as you lay out here, Detroit even lags really troubled systems like those in Chicago and New York. I mean, we're way behind even those that are already way behind.
Yeah, absolutely we are. But we think that our recommendations, especially things like the Detroit Education Commission, ensuring that school boards have power and control, having clear standards, calling for early childhood for all students so that they're ready when they come in, and making sure that parents have access through choice and enrollment systems. If we can do those things, we actually believe that we can turn around our school system fairly quickly. Our report actually calls for 150 great schools in 15 years, and we think we can do it.
Sandy, there are a couple of calls in here for the creation of a commission and boards and things like that, and I think some people look at this and go, great, more school bureaucracy. Is that what we really need?
Well, I think Tanya's probably tired of hearing me talk about let's make things simple, because that was kind of one of the mantras that I had at the coalition meeting, because we don't need more bureaucracy. One, you've got to fund it, and every dollar is precious here. The concept behind the Detroit Education Commission is something that actually we support very strongly. We do need an air traffic controller to ensure that all areas of the city have schools, good schools, and there's not an overabundance of choice in other areas. Right now we've got education deserts and an overabundance of choice, and not any of the schools, frankly, overall are really performing all that well. So we need to increase the quality everywhere, and we need to have schools everywhere. And we don't want high-performing schools to be established and have some Yahoo create a school across the street that creates confusion in the marketplace. We want good schools to thrive.
Lamar, we've gotten to a point, I think, where people look at other cities and they say, well, successful big cities that have troubled education systems at least offer a wide variety of choices that go beyond, say, public schools, that there's got to be this huge quilt of choices for parents. Where do you see that?
Well, first of all, when we looked at Denver and we looked at the Massachusetts model, we found that the school board provided those choices, those wide way of choices. And if you look in the 90s...
Public choices or a mixture of both?
A mixture of both. The charter schools, for instance, in Denver, they authorize, they're the single authorizer. So the elected governance is there, and that's what we found to be most effective, actually, when we looked at, we did our comparison.
Lastly, Tanya, the EAA, you'd like to see its, I don't guess the idea of it completely dissolved, but you want to see it administered in a different way.
Right. Well, we have state policy through the State School Reform Office and State School Reform District that actually allows the state to come in and function and help low-performing schools. We have 138 low-performing schools across the state, and what we're saying is why do we have a workaround with the EAA? So we have an investment there. there. We have a great chancellor there now. They're improving. That should migrate to the state level. And the schools that are currently under that should be responsibly transitioned back to DPS. And then that state school reform office can still help them improve.
The last thing I wanted to ask you, at Skillman, you're very well acquainted, obviously, with what's going on in the Detroit schools. But after this kind of a drill down, did you find yourself thinking, wow, this is worse than I thought? Or did you find yourself thinking, we can do this?
I think I found myself believing and understanding that it's worse than I thought, particularly because the erosion over the last 5 years has been dramatic. And we're seeing how it is eroding all schools. So this isn't just, you know, a lot of times we've been criticized that this is a Detroit public schools plan. Yeah. Absolutely not. Charter schools are having the same struggles as Detroit public schools, and we know we're not getting the academic results we want from any of those schools. So we have to fix our environment. We have to have a level playing field for all schools.
We've got to get to a break. Thank you all very, very much for being here. When we come back, we'll let the roundtable take a whack at it and talk about the political realities that are ahead as well. This is Flashpoint on Easter Sunday on Local 4.